Welcome back to the Grendhill Chronicles podcast. As ever, I am your host, Don Bishop. This episode is, as I mentioned last time, is from a conversation on January 9th, 2023, and it was divided into two parts, whereas last episode was more what's been going on in our personal lives, just skimming off the top a little bit. And today is kind of what's been developing on the writing and hopefully business side of things, as you'll hear in the episode. So enjoy, and we'll see you at the other end. This is still the newsletter for the Grendhill Chronicles and the Grendhill Chronicles podcast, so let's talk about that side of things. But wait, sorry, there's a segue between our personal lives. So we attended a conference in November. In the middle of all this chaos, we had signed up for a conference in February. We had signed up, and we decided not to change our plans, to go ahead and keep those plans. And we went to Las Vegas to attend.
You didn't mention why we might have been.
No.
It was just a little.
Yeah, so I mean, okay. So there's a Facebook group that I discovered a couple of years ago. It's a pretty big group called 20 Books to 50K. The notion is, one of the founding members of the group was an independent author, and he looked at his royalties, and on a particular day he made like $7. He started doing some math. He's like, obviously, I'm not going to make a livable wage off of $7 a day. But he did some math, and he's like, okay, if I had 20 of these, then I could make $50,000 a year, which is modest, but it's livable in much of the country. So this Facebook group is dedicated to making indie authoring livable. It's all about how to do the craft of making your book, putting it all together and marketing it, and strategies to make it work. So we went to their conference. This Facebook group has a conference, and we went to that conference in Las Vegas in November, and it was great. I came away fired up and feeling optimistic and full of even more ideas. What do you think? Because I'm talking too much.
I feel like I throw you off when I talk, so I hesitate to say anything.
Throw me off, babe.
I was just going to say, or I was thinking that one of the main things that I came away with was how you don't have to polish the thing so much. Like, just make a thing, and then you worry about it. Because, like, when you're writing, you're always trying to hone everything along the way. You want it to be beautiful and soulful and all of these things. And, and so I think, like, you have to kind of not think about it so much and just put it out and make something, just crank it out. And then that's the first thing. And I was really surprised that a lot of people seem to think, yeah, no, I don't worry about it too much, and then I just send it to the editor. And I was like, oh, I always worried I needed to have it more polished, more, I thought the editor was just a backup for things that I didn't catch. That's kind of how I thought of it before. But now I understand it's more of it's kind of a partnership more.
And some of these cats, so I have a musician background, so I can call people cats. Some of these cats, like, there's one guy in particular, I remember reading his post a year or two ago, and he was talking about how he does his business, how he makes a pretty good living as an independent author, and he cranks his books out. Like, he'll spend a week or two writing a book, and like Friday afternoon, he says the end, sends it to his editor, and the following week he starts writing another book. Meanwhile, the first book gets edited, and so, like, he has this, like, rotation where each book takes a few weeks to produce, but he only spends a week or two, I don't remember. He only spends one cycle per book writing it, and he pays somebody to edit it. He pays somebody to do the cover art, and all that.
And obviously, you want it to be cohesive,
yeah,
and have a good storyline. It's not like you want to just put out whatever.
But I'm actually applying these principles to this very update right now, to the newsletter / podcast. So we have notes here on the computer screen, but I'm just trying to get it out there and make sure it happens, because if every podcast episode were perfectly polished, there would be no podcast episodes. So this episode is happening. And I think let's talk about what we plan for the future as far as stories and as far as production. And I think some cats are out of the bags. As far as like, we went to this conference. What is our dream? And I've mentioned it before, like I would like to, but no, like now I feel like I see the path. I feel like now I see the path, and I want to make it as an indie author. And people say the self-published terminology is outdated and not quite relevant anymore, because the way publishing works is different now. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But there are services in place now that are ready to like you write the book, okay, then we'll list it on either Amazon or Kobo or whatever. They'll even get it in libraries. Like you can get it listed for libraries to be able to order it, so that this infrastructure is in place now. And it's not so much like you pay a vanity press and they deliver 5,000 books
and then
to
you
your
have
garage.
To peddle
and
them
now
everywhere.
you have
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that anymore. So I feel like there is a way, and we can see the way, and I want to make it happen. Timeline, I don't know. Before we talk more about the hopeful business, let's talk about stories.
Can I say something? I'm sorry, yes. I keep yawning.
It's late at night.
Late.
We put the kids to bed. It's after midnight. Wow.
And I've been sick for like a month and a half. I'm actually doing pretty well right now because, anyway.
Yeah. So this is us making it happen, you know?
Yeah. Been sleeping.
So for stories, if there's a guy out there who can crank out a book in a week, I can probably do one in 12 weeks. So I'm going to try to write a book per quarter this year. And so with the Grendhill Chronicles, I have written about 34,000 words of it so far. And one of these things at the conference, I learned about Kindle Vella, which is a platform for serial content. And, you know, I kind of look where I am with Grendhill. I would like to take advantage of Kindle Vella. For Kindle Vella, it has to be new content, though. Never available somewhere for free prior to that. So I think I'm going to take what I have so far of the Grendhill Chronicles and kind of the point where I am right now cuts off pretty well. Call that a novella. So there's the introductory novella, and I could go ahead and publish that now, I suppose. And I mean, begin the process. It definitely needs editing. It needs a lot of rewriting, but that's part of the process. It needs the developmental editing process to happen to it. I guess not really. It's not really ready for that. I need to do my own reworking before. Anyway, so I definitely need to rework some things. But yeah, that's going to be like the Grendhill Chronicles intro novella. And then book one, I want to have worded out, hashed out by the end of March.
I have to say something. I don't want it to seem like I'm like, whatever, Don. I don't know what your story is doing. You know, it's just I haven't been able to be much of a participant in his writing process because we've moved so many times. Like since the spring of 2019, we've moved. I think this is our 6th move.
Spring of 2019. Okay, so there's one. And then there's, I went to training, and then I went across the country, and then I flew back and brought you out across the country.
Oh, well, you had other
and
moves, but I mean like family moves.
A mile, and then we moved back over here into the Airbnb, and then we moved back into our house.
And there was when Rose moved
here. So
lived
if you really want to
for
get
a
technical,
month.
8.
Does that count Rose's move?
Well,
Out?
Rose was with, that was in there.
Anyway,
with
yeah.
me.
So 8.
8 times.
Well, and if you want to mention, the Utah trip was kind of a mini move.
Less than 3.
Like, for me, it was such an ordeal.
3.5 years. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
okay, 9.
So anyway, I've spent all my time just trying to keep the home fires burning. So don't think that I am disinterested or unsupportive. I am trying to be as supportive as I can with the infrastructure of day-to-day living. So when I'm like, I don't know, Dawn, don't look at me. It's not that I don't care.
And it's not that I'm just leaving her all alone either. It's just I do feel a greater burden to financially provide, and that's why I see myself looking at the stories a lot more lately as I have been starting to see the way on how to make it financially successful. But I want to support her in taking care of the kids at home and keeping this house a home, because we want her to write too. We've discussed 1 or 2 of Lila's story ideas, whereas I have lots, and I'll drive to work and back and just listen to podcasts and get ideas. And so when I get to work or when I get home, I'll have a new idea, and it's not every day. Maybe every couple of months on average. But I had 2 or 3 ideas this week, so it happens.
Well, and I'm interested more in pursuing maybe like the music side of things. I
haven't talked to you about that.
As part of our enterprise.
I totally want music in the enterprise. Like the Grendhill Chronicles.
I think, because that's where my strength is, I feel. I
want to write music, like the intro music that you hear at the beginning of the podcast. I made that in 2020. But as I write the books and eventually when we create the audiobook, I want music in there, like custom music that we write, not just for Grendhill. So I don't know, just by means of update, because this is not just an incremental update, because it's been nearly a year since I said anything on the podcast, but I might have mentioned 1 or 2 of these before. So obviously there's the Grendhill Chronicles. I have a middle grade urban fantasy that I'm working on. There's an adult urban fantasy. I'm not doing any explicit content. I just mean the characters and the target audience happen to be adults. But there's urban fantasy. Okay. There's a sci-fi. There's a sci-fi romance that I'm working on also. And that brings us to another point. And, okay, we also want to touch nonfiction. And so I mentioned that I want to have Grendhill 1 written by the end of March. You're not going to be able to read it in April. No, because actually I want to write this other sci-fi book and hash it out before I come back to Grendhill, and then I'm really going to work on getting Grendhill put out there. But we want to delve into a little bit of nonfiction also, specifically in children's books. So we want to produce some children's books, and I believe that's probably the first thing you'll see published from us. It's going to be some children's books. Okay.
Dawn's the one with the schedule. So, I mean, we've definitely talked about topics and things, and in fact, this is about a little over a year ago that we first touched on some of the ideas that we're going to be starting out with.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Me too.
And it's fun because we're going to be able to involve the kids too. So I think that'll be nice.
Yeah. I also want to produce these updates at least quarterly. Gotta set the bar realistic. No, I did. I did say monthly. So, yeah, I'm gonna try to push out an update monthly. It's not gonna be as long as this one every time because this is covering a lot. Or maybe it will be this long. Maybe I'll find more stuff to talk about. People tend to do that. So as you can hear, we're broadening the scope of writing. I'm broadening the scope of the Grendhill Chronicles podcast also. So as I broaden the scope of Grendhill, I'm looking at using the Grendhill Chronicles podcast as kind of, this is where we started. This is where you and I started, and so I'm gonna do some rebooting in the podcast, where I still do want to provide narrated story in the podcast. I believe it will start over from the beginning after I do some rewriting. But so let's get into some of these whys and hows. So there's story creation progress, and there's also building a business progress. And part of building a business is interacting with fans, hopefully, with all of our fan out there. As the if you ever listen to Car Talk, they would joke about all of their listener, and they would make it singular as a joke, and then they'd say thanks, Mom, for listening.
But for us, it's true. Hopefully not for long.
Yeah, hopefully both of our listeners are listening today, and they'll tell their friends. No, so like the building a relationship with you guys is important, because if we don't have any supporters, it's not going to work. Also, we need a name. And we've been talking a lot about what to name our business, because we're going to actually have a business entity. We haven't talked about all the details yet. We haven't had a chance to, but I'm thinking we'll probably, when we write checks or accept payment, that's going to be through the to and from the business name that we create. And we will write checks to ourselves. And when those checks to ourselves get big enough, then we'll be able to say goodbye day job and hello indie author career. So this business entity needs a name. And last year, maybe even the year prior, I think it was last year, I came up with the name Thorn Syndicate Publishing. And I was thinking, I was playing with the idea of the Grendhill universe having different kinds of stories within this same universe. Like I told a bedtime story to my kids about these people who live in giant trees. Like a single tree is their village, and they harvest the fruit from that tree, and they climb down to the ground, all the way down to the ground, to travel to the next tree over to do trade for a different kind of fruit. And I pictured, some kind of juvenile romance in this setting, and it's a different kind of story, might attract different readers. So I thought different author, or maybe supposedly. And so I was thinking, I was toying with things like the Chronologers Society, a supposed entity within the Grendhill universe that is making records of things that go on, and one of these is who writes Grendhill, the Grendhill Chronicles, and one of these is the one who writes this bedtime story I told. So I was toying with some name that would signify a group of collaborative or cooperative people. So there was society, syndicate. Yeah, I already own the website thorn.link, so Thorn Syndicate Publishing seemed to make sense. It's a little long though, and I'm thinking maybe just Grendhill Media. Grendhill, not expressing the entire scope of the effort, of course, but again, being the genesis, being our starting platform.
Was there, so that's business name. What did you want to mention about
structure? Well, I did mention structure a little bit. I mean, just where we create the business entity, and that way we can do accounting more cleanly. So the business's finances are not the same as our finances. They'll be very closely tied together, but we'll set up a bank account for the business, and I want to buy some software and some subscriptions for some of these tools that exist for independent authors. I want to use some of these things that are out there, but to tabulate all these, and then
as business
when we
costs.
when we get to next year, to do to file as self-employed and pay a self-employment tax, and then do all these receipts, looking through our bank account to keep track. No, just separate bank account, etc. And I was trying to keep this to 15 minutes. We're at 38 minutes almost right now on the recording. It'll be a little bit shorter once it's edited, but I don't know. What else do we want to talk about?
I don't know. My brain's kind of fried.
I'm sure we're forgetting things, but feel free to ask us questions.
I was just thinking that the idea behind having this syndicate was not just for the various stories, but also so that the various family members could participate.
Yeah.
And have their own entry into the effort.
Yeah.
So I like that. That's part of it.
Oh, and I guess we don't need to talk about pseudonyms, pen names.
It is one thing we've been talking about.
It is.
But we don't have anything to announce yet.
No. I mean, we've been throwing around some ideas, but the thing with pen names, it's not just to protect your identity, and it's not just to so you can get taken seriously, maybe writing fantasy as a woman or writing romance as a man. If I did that, mm-hmm. It's not just about
appearances.
It's not just about appearances. It's also to avoid confusing readers and algorithms. I was listening to the Creative Pen podcast. She's an independent author, and she has her podcast. She talks about the business of writing, and she does interviews. And there was a gentleman on her show in the middle of 2020, because I'm catching up, and I just started listening a few weeks ago, but I don't remember his name, but he wrote a historical fiction, and he saw on Amazon, he looked at the listing for his book, and down lower you see like people who bought this also bought. So he saw in his also boughts some nonfiction works, and he knew that people looking at those books might see his book and not be interested. And so he's like, oh dear, because he had also written some nonfiction. So then he went and created a pen name, so that his those of his fans wanting his nonfiction don't get disinterested, because they're looking for the nonfiction and they find the fiction, and they're like, oh well, forget him. Also, Amazon's algorithms will see something like that, and they'll be like, oh, this book isn't doing well, and so they'll just kind of bury it in favor of other books that will do well.
So how does that actually work? So it's not doing well because it's not competing in the genre? Yeah, because it's misgenred by the algorithm. And even though it's marked as historical fantasy, it's misgenred by the algorithm. Mm-hmm. It's misgrouped. It's on the wrong bookstore shelf. Yeah.
And so people coming to this shelf looking for that find this, and they don't want it. Mm-hmm. And so it needs to be properly shelved. Mm-hmm. So if I'm writing fantasy, I could probably write fantasy and sci-fi under the same pen name. But then children's books, a little bit different. And if I ever wrote a romance, a little bit different. Should probably use different pen names for these different genres. But, yeah. Hopefully, next month's progress will be like,
co-host.
I am X thousand number of words into Grendhill 1, and it's going to be exciting, let me tell you what. We'll see.
And hopefully I'll be more awake.
Yeah.
I've been sleeping a lot lately because of this sickness.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up. If you read this in an email, or if I post it on the website and you read it there, be sure to look us up on Patreon. Be sure to look us up on YouTube. Look us up in your favorite podcatcher if you're reading this, or anyway. You search Grendhill and you'll find us. I invented that word over a decade ago, and I pretty much own it now. We don't have a presence on TikTok yet. I do intend to create one, but we'll get there. Look us up and search for Grendhill. You'll find us. And logging off. We'll see you later. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. As always, look us up on social media. You can search Grendhill or send us an email at questions@thorn.link. And I have to interrupt myself there. So I recorded this intro and outro a day or two or three after Lila and I had this extended conversation that had a couple of different topics covered, and so I split it into 2 episodes. But before I log off, I want to give you some updates that have happened since we recorded these 2 episodes on January 9th. It is tonight, February 14th. It's a little late, yeah. We had 5 Guys for dinner and had some red velvet cake, minus the red, because it was homemade and we didn't need the... Anyway, so things that have happened since then. And if you've been following me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, you'll know a few of these things, but you won't know everything. Since we recorded these 2 episodes, we filed Thorn Syndicate Publishing, LLC. It exists as a legally existing business entity, as an LLC. And we filed a fictitious name, also known as a doing business as, or DBA, Grendhill Media. So we kind of went with both, Thorn Syndicate Publishing and Grendhill Media. And the way we're looking at it is Thorn Syndicate Publishing obviously is the legal name of our business, but that's where we're housing any nonfiction. That's where we're going to house children's books when we produce them. Whereas Grendhill Media is going to house, obviously, the Grendhill Chronicles, as well as other fantasy and science fiction that I will write. So yes, the business exists, and along with that, we also opened a bank account and placed a small financial investment in our new company. And that way we can spend out of the business bank account for business-related expenses, and that'll be a lot tidier when tax time comes next year. And along with that, we registered for 20 Books Vegas remote. We would love to go in person. We're just not sure if that's in the cards for this year. So we registered for 20 Books Vegas again, at least to attend remotely, and that got paid out of our business account. And also, our web hosting came due again for payment, and that paid out of the business account. I have also written what I consider to be a good chunk of Go Hamasp. That is a superhero story based on a group of individuals with what one might consider to be useless superpowers. And it's supposed to be a humorous angle on that. And, for all of you writing veterans out there, okay, I haven't written that much. But in a few weeks, I got 12,000 words out, and then I got sick. I was sick for the last week and a half. If you follow my Facebook channel, the Grendhill Media Facebook page, then you saw my live video last Saturday, and I thought I might be getting over the illness at that time. No, I wasn't. I spent most of the day on Sunday in bed. It was pretty rough. And I'm feeling pretty well now. Anyway, so one final update that I want to include here is that I've pretty much settled on my pen name for writing fiction. And it's not 100%, but it's pretty much there. And so I will call myself Solmi Pedramon. Those, the first name and the surname are entirely made up, although it just so happens that Solmi is a surname in Italian, and Pedramon is, I think it's some form of Arabic where it exists as part of the language, or maybe that was just Pedram. Anyway, so but Solmi Pedramon does have a first name as well, starting with the letter T. So that's T, Solmi Pedramon. And like I said, it's not 100% because I'm still tossing around what that T stands for. I know all the letters in it. I'm just playing it with it as anagrams. I'm switching the letters around and seeing what it spells and seeing what I might settle on. Now, going forward, I would love someday to publish the podcast more frequently than once a month. But for the time being, this is where we are. Last month, I was riled up and I was excited because I had recorded these 2 episodes in one go. I edited them together, mostly. And I wanted to roll this episode out. And, my sister sent me a text and said, "Hey, I just watched your podcast. When's the next one coming out?" And I was like, yes. And I explained, okay, probably middle of next month. I'm not going to do more frequently than that until we have a few, up our sleeve, ready to go. And I'm glad that we didn't jump because life got crazy and I got sick and I would not have been able to keep it up and I would have felt bad. So it's better just to stick to something reasonable. Now, talking about if you follow us on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram, we do have a YouTube channel also. Statistically, I believe chances are you're probably watching this on YouTube. I don't have my podcast download statistics available to me. I'm working on getting that. But the YouTube version of the last episode had, last time I checked, 57 views, which is pretty good because, that's probably my sister watching it 57 times because I don't have that many. No, so jump on YouTube and search for Grendhill Chron or just Grendhill. Search for Grendhill and you'll find the Grendhill Chronicles YouTube channel. And please follow because right now I have 19 subscribers and I was trying to go live on YouTube the other day and I could not because that requires one to have at least 50 subscribers. So jump on YouTube and hit subscribe. That will enable us to do little live updates like I wanted to do the other day. I went ahead and uploaded a video instead. But, yeah. Signing off. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. As always, look us up on social media. You can search Grendhill or send us an email at questions@thorn.link. And we'll talk to you next time.